So here we go. This is the Byrna CL, or compact launcher. Now, I wasn't expecting to buy one of these. It was kind of an accident, honestly. See, what happened was I accidentally bought some 8-gram CO2 cartridges off the internet, and I thought, oh, well, these 8 grams, they're only going to work in something like a Byrna CL. So my hand was forced. I had to get the CL. So it comes in a pretty nice little case, as you can see. Let's take a look inside. Okay, this is what it comes like right here. And it comes with this warning right here. It says, ensure CO2 canister is firmly pressed. We'll talk about that. And it has instructions for initial conditioning. To ensure optimal performance, shoot 30 rounds with standard CO2 canisters. Following this, run 1 oil canister through the firearm. So if you don't know, if you buy a box of CO2 canisters from Byrna, it says 10 count. One of them, which I've already used here, has oil in it. And it's even printed on there. It says oil. I don't know if you can read that. But one will be designated as the oil cartridge. So every 10 CO2 cartridges, they recommend running one of these oil CO2 cartridges through it. There's also an oiling kit. This is used. I'll put it to the side. There's also an oiling kit that you can buy. But I'm going to, after I did that, so I've done the initial conditioning. I've shot over 50 rounds through it, including through the with the oil cartridge. So what I plan to do is just use some plain old marker oil. This is the T4E brand marker oil, and just use it the way I normally do, which is put a little bit of oil on the tip of the CO2 cartridge and put a couple of drops of oil down into the chamber that holds the CO2 cartridge. So there's a screw cap here that comes off, and you can see down in there. So I put 2 or 3 drops of oil right down in there. And then you close that back up. You would put your CO2 cartridge in backwards. Let's take one of these. Hopefully I can get it out after I do this. So that card said, be sure and press your CO2 cartridge in there firmly. So instead of just placing it in there like that, like you would with most Byrnas, as I take it, this is my first Byrna, so I don't have the experience with the other ones, but you would see how it's kind of poking out a little bit. So you press down on it like that. And that's apparently an important step to do. Oh, good. It came right out. Okay. So you press down on it, you put the cap back in. And then you take one of the magazines to tighten it up. So each magazine has a little Allen wrench, basically, on the bottom. Right here. Right there. There's basically an Allen wrench built into every magazine. So after you get that CO2 in there, you'd snug it up like this. So that's how that goes. Now, what I'm going to say is, yes, this is small for a less lethal launcher, but it is still a little bit bulky compared to, I'm going to bring up some firearms. There are firearms, you know, like 380s and things like that, that can be significantly smaller than this. But for a less lethal launcher, this is quite small, especially the grip. The grip is very small. So small, in fact, that I ordered the, just out of curiosity really, I ordered a magazine. Now they call this the Finger Groove magazine, and it's very slightly different than the stock magazines. This one just has a little bit more of a ledge to it. And I figured I wanted an extra magazine just because. And mainly I was just curious if this would actually do anything. It didn't look, it doesn't really look like a big difference. And it really isn't, but I'll tell you what. With the stock magazine, I get about 2.5 fingers on the launcher. With the Finger Groove magazine, I get all 3 fingers on there. And it's such a small difference, but it is noticeable. I didn't think it would do much, but it kind of does. These cost $5 more than your standard magazines, if I remember right. So, is it worth the price? I don't know, that's up to you. If you have larger hands, smaller hands, you know, maybe you want that. It's totally not necessary though. Totally not necessary. This launcher comes with 2 magazines. You can even see the cutouts for everything. It comes with 2 CO2, 8 gram CO2 cartridges. It comes with some kinetic projectiles, some pro training projectiles. Now I believe these are the kind, yes, filled with inert powder. So if you wanted to practice using this as a pepper ball launcher, this is what you would use, these pro training projectiles. So these break apart on impact. These kinetic projectiles do not. It comes with 2 tubes. There are just 5 in there of kinetic projectiles. If you want more, you got to shell out for a half-filled bottle. They couldn't come up with a new bottle? What's the deal? They packed the old 68 caliber bottle with cotton on the bottom to fit your new 61 caliber projectiles in there. So that's one of the big, I'm not going to say drawbacks, but one of the big differences here is they reduced the caliber size. Most of their launchers, as far as I know, were 68 caliber, and now they're moving to a new 61 caliber, which is different than any other, which is different than a paintball gun. A paintball gun would typically use 68 caliber, or in the less common 50 caliber. So I have 50 caliber ammunition, I have 60 caliber ammunition, or 68 caliber ammunition. Now I've got 61 caliber. Now, let's see. This, I want to talk about this here. I mentioned those inert pro training projectiles that break apart. Now the real reason that I got this was for these. These are the Max Projectiles. This is what you would use. They're similar to a pepper ball. They're slightly more expensive. These are very expensive. You could get a tube of, or a couple of tubes of like the Byrna branded bad guy repellent, and it's just like a pepper spray that you would spray at somebody for the cost. This 5 count tube costs $30, if I remember right. But this is what I intend to use this launcher for. I'm sure you can, there are slightly cheaper rounds that are Pava plus a little bit of OC, I think. This is OC, let me see. Yes, contains OC and tear gas blend. And I'm afraid to even take these out of the package. I'm going to do it now and just kind of sniff and see if I'm incapacitated just by opening the package. I don't know. But I have a little bit of a fear of these things. I don't want them to break apart in the launcher. I don't want them to break apart inside the house, because these will incapacitate you. Okay, I'm curious. So they are sealed with a couple of little tabs here. Let's break those. Okay. Now let's pop this thing open. Okay. Here's how it comes. It comes with a little silica gel dealy in there to keep them nice and dry. Now, I'm just going to put my nose near the top of this opening here and see if I can smell anything, or see if there's any residual powder in the packaging. So I want to know if, when I load this magazine with these Max Projectiles, am I going to have to wear gloves? Am I going to have to wash my hands 10 times? What's the experience going to be? Okay, I don't smell anything. Let's take one out. This is what they look like. Now these are powerful, powerful little projectiles that can incapacitate somebody for half an hour, even up to 45 minutes. You won't be able to open your eyes. You won't be able to really do much of anything if this gets in your eyes, anything like that. So I'm going to take care not to touch my face after touching this thing. But I don't see any powder on this round. There's obviously powder. I can see the powder, the gray side there. It's two halves. There's a kind of a blue side and then a translucent side, and I can see the powder moving around as I move that projectile. But I don't see anything on the outside. So it looks like they made it quite safe. Now when you load these, what I've been told is that you want to load them kind of color to color. So you don't want to load them vertically with this weld, because you'll have some pressure on that weld there, and something could maybe break open over time or something like that. So you want to load them in this way. You don't want to load them this way. I'm not going to load it right now because I don't want to tempt fate. So I don't feel anything on my hand, anything on my fingers. I haven't gotten a whiff of anything. I don't feel... They feel perfectly clean. So there's no worry there so far. Okay, that's good. All right. So let's see, what else was there to talk about? I think I covered most things. So like I said, I went through that initial conditioning. I've got about 50 rounds through it. And I oiled it even before I ran that oil cartridge through it. I put a couple of drops, like I said, in the compartment that holds the CO2, and I put a couple of drops on each cartridge that I used, just like I do with other markers. And let's load up some of these kinetic projectiles. So here's what these look like. They look fairly high quality. They measured 2.09 grams when I measured them. I measured a handful about this many, and they all came out to the exact same 2.09 grams. Now, if you're not familiar with Byrna, or with any launcher that has a spring-loaded arm at the top of the magazine, I'm not in love with this. I really am not, because if you put your rounds in there and then you accidentally put a little too much pressure, not a lot of pressure, just some pressure on that spring-loaded arm, guess what's going to happen? Yeah, all your rounds come out. And if you have 5 in there, all 5 are going to pop out like that, and you're going to be searching on the floor. So I wish they had gone to a different design with the magazine on the top. That's my biggest gripe with the Byrnas. Other launchers have that design as well, or a similar design, like the X68 Pastel. And I've had rounds escape on me before. Now, alright, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5-round magazine. Now you'll notice I got 6 rounds out. So what you can do, I don't know if this is recommended or not, but there's a little indicator here on the top. I'm not sure if that's even the right word, but there's a thing that pops up when you pull the trigger. You notice how that pops up there? Now that serves a purpose. Now, when you insert this magazine, suddenly that thing is halfway popped up. Now, when I take the magazine out, you'll notice I only have 4 rounds in this magazine now. So 1 round is retained inside the launcher. Now, what you could do is take a 6th round, put it in there, and then kind of like a firearm, you'll have 5 plus 1. Now the reason that that's popped up, it shows you, one, it shows you that there's something, that there's a round retained in the launcher, and it also serves the function of removing that round from the launcher. So if you press down on it like that, your round pops right out. So that's how I would probably carry it. It would be 5 plus 1. Now, you only get 5 Max Projectiles, so maybe a mix. Maybe the first one would be a kinetic projectile, and then all the rest Max Projectiles, something like that. Now, to puncture the CO2 on this, Byrna has a patent on this pole pierce technology, they call it. So when there's no CO2 in it right now, there's no rounds or anything in it, so it's perfectly safe. When you pull the trigger, that's when the CO2 gets punctured. Instead of most markers where there's a screw-on cap on the bottom and you smack that cap and that's when it's punctured. No, on this Byrna, pulling the trigger is what punctures that CO2. So you can do it kind of 2 ways. You can pull the trigger all the way on the first round and it'll puncture the CO2 and fire a projectile at about half speed. Or there's a kind of a trick to it. I haven't mastered this at all, but if you pull the trigger back about, I don't know, 75% of the way, you can manage to puncture that CO2 without firing off a round. Now, in practice, I don't think I would ever do that, but playing with it in the garage or just having fun with it and pointing it at your target tent or whatever target you're shooting at and trying to see if you can get that CO2 punctured without firing a first round. But the reason you would want to do that is because then your first round is going to be at full power. It won't come out at half speed, it'll come out at full speed. Now, speaking of speeds, I was able to get, when I did get a puncture, and my first round was my hot round, and using these Seltzer Charger CO2s, I was able to get 438 feet per second on these 2.09 gram projectiles, which is something like 18 point something joules. Now when I did it the other way, and I fired and shot a projectile on the first shot, obviously it came out at a reduced speed. It was about 200 feet per second, a little bit less than that. So really not great. And then my next shot was my hotter shot that came out at 400 feet per second, which is something like 15 point something joules. And then it dropped from there, obviously, as all the launchers do. You know, your first round, or on this one, your second round, is going to be your fastest, most powerful round, and then it's just going to slowly drop over each round after that. One other thing to mention, it's probably pretty obvious. Notice there's no safety of any kind on here. There is no safety. Other Byrnas have the ability to flick the safety on, then pull the trigger to pierce that CO2, and then turn the safety off, and then that first round will be at high power, at your highest power level. This doesn't have that, so you're going to have to just live with the fact that that first round is going to be half speed, which is what I plan on doing, because when if I actually need this in an emergency, there's no way I'm going to be able to be like, okay, maybe I can get this to puncture if I put my finger here and that. No, I'm just going to point and shoot, and that first round is going to be basically a warning shot, a kinetic projectile coming out, and then the next 5 rounds are going to be OC and tear gas, and give somebody a really bad day. So I knew this was compared to some of the other launchers out there, I knew this was a lower joule device. This is not something that you're going to put the kinetic projectiles in and expect those to deter an attacker, because I don't really have faith that that's going to do that. I don't think that's how this was designed. I think it was designed really as a pepper ball launcher, or these Max Projectile launcher or something like that. And I think that's how it would be most effective. So there's the Byrna CL. I think I covered pretty much everything.